Good morning, everyone. We'll recognize that it is 10 o'clock, which is the duly noted time in our public notice for this meeting for the Lawrence County Redevelopment Commission. This is a special meeting, not our usual monthly meeting. I will call this meeting to order 10 o'clock, Thursday, March 2nd. The purpose of this meeting is strictly for information gathering. This is a meeting, well, good morning, Mayor. You're here just in time. This is a meeting where we are going to refresh our memories about the use of and potential advantages of build, operate, transfer model as a way to construct the shell building. We had a presentation from Greg Martz last spring when we first were talking about this idea of the shell building down in the Mitchell Industrial Park, and Greg gave us a lot of good information. It's been several months, and I know my memory at least doesn't remember everything that I need to know about this system. But we are now facing a deadline to sign a contract to begin the construction of the shell building in the Mitchell Industrial Park. We want to make sure that we select the best method for construction of that shell building, and so it seemed appropriate, Greg, to ask if you would come up and remind us about how build, operate, transfer works, and how we might, if we so choose, how we might deploy that as our means of contracting for construction. So I would invite you to come speak to Lawrence County Redevelopment Commission.
Thank you very much, Jeff. For the record, my name is Greg Martz, M-A-R-T-Z is how you spell my last name. And my company is GM Development, which is Greg Martz. I think probably, I was thinking the best way to maybe have this conversation is in two parts. One part being how the law actually works, and then the second part being why you would use it, because obviously those are two different subjects. The way that you use the laws is pretty simple, and when I talk through this, I'll talk in terms of a shell building, but when you're framing it in your mind, you can actually use this type of procurement for any sort of government or municipal project. From I think probably the first 30 projects I did or so were all public safety, so it kind of became known as a public safety law 10, 12 years ago. Every shell building I've ever done has been procured underneath this statute. So it's wide range that it can be used, but again, I'll frame it in terms of a shell building as we're talking through this. The law's been around for a really long time. There was a form of it. We can't get a copy of what the law read back then because it changed in '97. But there was a form of it that was actually used to create the Hoosier Dome. So that's why it was originally existed, was somewhere around '79, from the best we can tell. The laws then was recodified in 1997 to its current statute, which is IC 5-23. If you wanted to read that, it's a pretty easy read. It's, if you were to print it out, it's maybe 10, 11 pages, something like that. And really, Section 5 is the important one. I'd say if you were to read the statute, the important thing are the definitions at the beginning and Section 5, because Section 5 tells you how to use the law. The process is a RFQ process, and what that stands for is Request for Qualifications. And what that means is that you would be putting out a public advertisement. So this is a public procurement process. You put out a public advertisement, and the way that you would do that is by advertising this RFQ in the newspaper 2 times. The way that the law reads is that the advertisements need to be 1 week apart, and then you need to receive your RFQ responses no earlier than 1 week after the second advertisement. And so a lot of times you'll hear people say this is a 2-week process, and that's why they're saying that. It's just 1 week apart for each of those. So in order to do this, though, if you remember, the statute had existed for a long time, and then basically got mothballed after it was used for that first project. In '97, what the legislature said is that any government in the state can now use it, because prior to that, it was only Marion County that could use it. So starting in '97, any government can use it, but because it was pre-existing, you do have to adopt the statute in order to use it. That's a really simple process. It's a resolution, all the ones I've ever seen have been written very simply that just say we're aware of the statute, we'd like to potentially use it in the future, and so we're adopting it so that we can do that. And I've got a bunch of those from the past that I can work with your attorney on if he would like to review some of those. Once you adopt it, and you'd adopt that at your board level, then you can use the statute as many times as you want. So presumably, the first time you use it would be to do this exploratory process for a shell building. So that's when you put out the RFQ. Generally, the entire RFQ is published. They're not very long because since they're qualifications based, essentially all you're saying is we're thinking about doing a shell building. We're looking for someone who's qualified to help us figure out if we should do it or not. So you can imagine it doesn't need to be very long for that. So let's say you receive, 2, 3, 4 proposals. Then you would simply just pick who you think is the best response, the most qualified response. What you're not doing at that point is you're not putting anyone under contract, and this is very important. What you're essentially saying is you appear to be the most qualified response, and we want to work with you to essentially make sure you are who you appear to be, one. So it's kind of like you're interviewing with them over this process. But also, two, we need information to know if we even want to do this project. Because, one of the outcomes here might be that you select them, they work with you for a couple months, and maybe the budget is just more than you think it should be. And if that's the outcome, then all you do is simply cancel the process. You don't owe them any money. It's just that you receive free information, but that information just told you this project isn't going to work, or maybe the site doesn't work for some reason, those sorts of things. But obviously, hopefully what the outcome is you receive a budget that you like, you receive a design and site plan that you like, and something that you can afford. And so that period between when you select your qualified provider and the final step, which is the public hearing to actually approve the project, everything between those two steps is called a scoping period. And all you're doing during the scoping period is essentially making sure that these guys, you really do want to work with them, and two, making sure you want to do this project. And that can last as long as you need it to. We've done some scoping periods that were literally just a couple weeks long. Those are more for projects when the city knows they need to do something. On an exploratory process like how you guys would be doing, I could see it lasting 3-4 months would probably be about right. And then and during that time, you'd be getting all your questions answered, whatever it might be. Now you could push it faster than that, you could make it slower than that. But I think the natural progression probably is going to be around 3 months where you end up having the information you need to know if you want to move forward or not. So once that team gives you that budget that you like, that design you like, and essentially gives you analysis on the site that says the project will work, then the final step is that you call a public hearing. That public hearing has a 7-day notice requirement, and it can be like today where it's a special session if you wanted it to be, but most often it's timed to be with one of your normally scheduled meetings, and it's an agenda item within that meeting. So, and at that meeting, that team then would be presenting their budget, presenting their design, and it gives the opportunity for the public to make comments if they want to. If you decide to move forward with the project at that meeting, then that's when you would actually put the contractor under contract to move forward. So it's kind of nice in that you have a lot of exit ramps along the way, and this is definitely an exploratory process. That's if you remember one thing about this is the word exploratory, because you're not committed until that very final step. So that's the way the law works. And again, just for your notes, it's a 4-step process, which is adopt the resolution to adopt the statute, publish your RFQ, and then your selected team then enters into that scoping period where you're receiving the information you need to know if you want to do this project or not. And then the fourth and final step is that public hearing where they present it, and then that's when you'd be voting on whether you want to move forward or not. So those are the 4 steps. The second part I want to talk with you about is why you might want to use this, this law, but do you have any questions for me just on the